Hello and welcome, Anthony Robbins fans. An extremely excited welcome this afternoon to this month's webinar for all of our guests today who are absolutely committed to mastery. My name is Michael Savage. I'm a coach and trainer here at Robbins Research, and it's my pleasure to be your host today. As with any experience here at Robbins, we know that to get the most out of the content today, you'll choose to be in a peak state. Be sure to hydrate, sit up straight, ready to learn, and actively participate. How can you do that? Make sure to take notes. Send in your questions in the box on the right, and be ready for the Q&A promptly following the presentation. Customer service. We all expect it to be great when we're on the receiving end. And in business, especially in the times that we live in today with so many options, it can be one of the keys to the success of your business. In fact, at Business Mastery, Tony talks about the seventh force of Business Mastery being creating raving fans. And that starts with having a raving fan culture. Well, how do you do that? Today, Robert Richmond will share key insights on how a culture that is service-oriented can truly serve your business. Robert Richmond is the manager of Zappos Insights, the Zappos family company dedicated to helping businesses with their culture. As an entrepreneur, Robert built the model from a proof-of-concept website to a thriving business helping thousands every month. Business leaders, managers, and entrepreneurs take the Zappos Insights training to discover how a workplace can help grow, inspire amazing service, and ultimately drive revenue. Robert facilitates major training events, co-created the Zappos Insights training curriculum, and is currently writing The Culture Blueprint, a guidebook of leverage tools to shift cultures. He has coached and trained leaders from Verizon, Microsoft, Intuit, Eli Lilly, and hundreds of other companies. Robert has also developed the Zappos Goals program. It's life coaching for Zappos employees, and co-developed the Z-Frogs Initiative, the Zappos internal venture group to launch new ideas. Prior to joining Zappos, Robert developed digital marketing strategies for brands including Tony Robbins, Sony, Billboard, and best-selling business authors. He co-founded the Affinity Lab, a collaborative workspace for entrepreneurs that continues to graduate over 150 businesses in Washington, D.C. He's also a Georgetown-trained leadership coach. He delivers keynote speeches on company culture and advises leaders how to create self-sustaining cultures in their own organizations. So remember, folks, following, Robert will have some question and answer, and you can easily submit those questions using the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. We're recording as well, and this may become available to our listeners today, as well as have some of our webinars in the past. So we'll see what we can do there for you. But for now, let's sit up in our chairs in a peak state, ready to learn, and welcome to your Mastery webinar from Zappos Insights, Mr. Robert Richmond.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike. It's great to be talking to everybody here. I've been a big fan of the Robbins organization for a long time, and got to go to one of the Business Mastery events and just seen the quality of people who are there, so I know that there must be amazing people here on the line that I'm talking with. And I'm excited to talk to you about this topic today, and definitely really excited to get to the Q&A portion. Even if it's things that you might think are specific to your organization, sometimes that's where the most interesting cases are. So I hope that you'll feel free to ask anything, whether it be general or specific, and feel free to put me on the spot. I really want to be of most value to you in terms of creating the type of organization and level of culture and service that you really want. So this is about what we call delivering wow, and I think that nobody is in the business to deliver bad customer service. That's not really the issue. It's going to really get deeper than that. We're going to get beyond just the importance of good customer service, and we're going to assume that you're already interested in that and have kind of seen the level of importance of this, and really get into what that looks like at the cultural level, and then, like I said, dive deeper in with the Q&A. So in terms of who Zappos is, I'm sorry, my presentation, Mike, is it advancing on your end?
I'm still on the home screen with Deliver Wow.
Okay, here we go. Now is it going?
There we go. Perfect.
Okay, great. So just in terms of who we are, we've really become known for being the #1 shoe store online. Really excelled to grow into clothes, housewares, accessories, and more because we become more than about shoes. Over 10 million customers, Sometimes we can take as many as 10,000 calls a day with 400 to 500 reps on shifts that are happening 24/7, 365 days a year. So just a little bit of the business landscape there. But what you've probably heard about beyond that is stories about what it's like at Zappos, and you really can't know it for certain until you experience it directly for a tour, and we give free tours Monday through Thursday, and I hope that you'll consider coming out and experiencing it for yourself. It's something that we want to share with the world, and again, it's something for free. But this gives you a little bit of a take of what it's like here. Very, very creative, personally expressive environments. And we take a very, very corporate place. Architecturally, it's incredibly boring. Our address is Corporate Circle. So it's a very corporate building, but we take it and really make it our own, creating very fun places and just creating a space for people to enjoy themselves. I actually heard it once said, if it works for people who are 8 years old, then it works for anybody at Zappos. And these are some of the rows that you would see there of people who are really just completely expressive there. You can see we have low cubicle walls, so everybody's open and in the same environment there. Everybody expresses their own personality because we encourage people bringing their entire selves to work. You'll see people who look like punk rockers to nerds to geeks to highly fashionable people walking down the aisles. Every walk of nature that if this were, a high school environment, you'd say there's no way those people even talk to each other. But the connection is really invisible, while externally we embrace a lot of our differences. This is Tony's desk right here. As you can see, it's the same as anybody else's. It's an open environment. Our whole idea is around our values of being humble and open and honest communication. So anybody can walk up to Tony at any time and ask a question, and there's no gatekeeper assistant there at the door with him or anything like that. This is at our KY, Kentucky shipping center. People just cutting loose, having a good time. A tiki bar at the training department. Pirate Day, of course. All these things are just to give you a glimpse of what it's like here. I think the most indicative part of the culture is actually something that's very subtle here, really, in this picture, which are the smiles. That's something that is a very unique experience when people are here. Just imagine a whole environment where everybody's really friendly, everybody's looking out to help each other. Just walking into it and just saying hi to somebody, you can feel it immediately, kind of walking into a great party and just being able to feel that on a vibe level. And consistently people tell us that on the tour. We don't do any kind of song and dance. We don't do any kind of performance for people. People are just literally walking the halls with us, getting to experience life at Zappos as it is right here. And in terms of me, that's me on the bottom acting the fool at a all-hands meeting. This is when we celebrate all together. This is at a Las Vegas club after we get together and shut down the entire call center for a team meeting where we get to really celebrate. And this is a key theme I want everybody to really write down, which is after having met with some of the biggest, best companies in the world, some of the most growing ones, and some of the ones that are really struggling, everybody seems to not take enough time just to stop and celebrate what has already happened. We're all so goal-oriented. We're all so future-focused and really A-driven A players that we don't take the time to just stop and say, hey, let's take some time for us, not for the customer, but to celebrate what we've done and how we've come so far. And my entree into this, Tribal Leadership, is the book there. We actually teach a lot on tribal leadership as a way to learn the different levels of culture. It's a highly great book I recommend reading. I was representing it at the time and eventually worked out a sponsorship deal where Zappos created the audio version of it, and now you can get it for free on, if you just type in Tribal Leadership at Zappos.com, you can download the audio version for free. And Tony was interested in really scaling the culture to share it with the world. We were sharing through tours and meetings and just sharing information with everybody, but he really wanted to create a whole business out of it because there was such a strong need. And for us to grow it and keep sharing the culture, we needed it to really show an ROI. So now it went from just a small idea and a website to now we have a 16-person company that I'm managing that shares the culture through classes, through a boot camp that we do in culture, tours, and culture books that we send around the world. I'm not sure if you can hear the noise behind me, but there's actually a parade going on as we speak through this closed door here. So why listen to the rest of this story? And I like to mention this part in terms of factors of credibility within business, because oftentimes when I talk to people, especially business leaders, they're really kind of get frustrated because there isn't a direct ROI correlation between a lot of these initiatives that we've taken on and things that we've made happen and things that we really believe in with revenue and profitability. But at the same time, the factors are there. In terms of American Express with their Customer Choice Awards, just ranked us #1 in 2011 for customer service. And we also are now #6 on the best places to work list in America. This kind of shows you our charts through 2008 of hockey stick style growth. It really keeps excelling into the multi-billions as we're getting into 2011. This is a slide that needs to be updated. And so these standard indicators of business success are really there. So that's where I'm showing that there's more of a dotted line that we can't really see between this great success and some of the things that we're doing. So how did this all start? A lot of you might know the story if you've read Delivering Happiness or heard from Tony, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but it is just interesting to note where the roots of this all began, because where the roots of it are really speaks to our success today as well. Because this was back in the day in the mid-'90s here. I show this slide to show that this was when people were convinced it was impossible to sell shoes online. This is a very tactile experience. And just starting it up in that small building there to the left in San Francisco, people really thought it would fail. But the reasons why it succeeded were really innovations that came out of limitations. So what happened was the original founder, Nick Swinmurn, while other businesses were testing out business plans for $20 million, this is back in the dot-com day, if you remember it, when people would just spend millions and millions of venture capital invested funds only to find out their business model didn't work. And instead, this guy actually took pictures of shoes at a shoe store, put them online, sold them, and then went down to the shoe store to buy the shoes and send them through the post office. Like that, we're talking about a scrappy beta. That's one of the philosophies that we've had, is just to test it quick and cheap to see if there's really a market for something before really investing a lot of time and money. And Tony, at the time, this guy here, you can see him here with a lot of shoes, which is ironic because I think he owns about 3 pairs of shoes. But he really saw that the passion for Nick and saw that there was a market for it because 5% of the market was doing it by mail order, and said, okay, there's something to be experimented with here. But even being the first into it, it was still something that seemed to be impossible. But the way that it was really differentiated was by creating an experience that was remarkable. And that was what allowed us to really grow. Because this was a time, competing with a lot of other .coms that were out there, this was a time, if you remember, everybody was spending millions of dollars on Super Bowl ads. And whether they would work or not, it was the only way to really get people to know about the .com. And we didn't have that kind of money to use back then. So we actually took a gamble that paid off really well, which was we said, look, we can't compete with the marketing dollars of these big guys who are buying ads on Super Bowls. And this was before AdWords was really getting extensive, and you could do a lot of target marketing with direct marketing campaigns that would show a big ROI that you could monitor. So instead, we used that limitation to say, why don't we take our marketing budget and put it into the customer experience itself? Doing things like, and I'll cover more of these later in the presentation, but creating an experience that was like going into a shoe store. So we created almost instantaneous delivery where now you can order as late as midnight sometimes and still get shoes the next morning. So you, like walking out of a shoe store, you get that instant gratification. Or free shipping back and forth, and allowing people to send as many pairs back as they want so they could try on as many as they want. And people would come to start to talk about this experience. And that's what we started to find as the nature of our success was how can we create an experience that people love and talk about consistently. And that became the focus rather than really focusing on marketing itself. So this is something that Tony thought about early on and wrote. At Zappos.com, we decided a long time ago that we didn't want our brand to be just about shoes or clothing or even online retailing. We decided that we wanted to build our brand to be about the very best customer service and the very best customer experience. We believe that customer service shouldn't just be a department. It should be the entire company. And that's really where it starts to bridge into culture, that this isn't just about a customer service department or customer service people. It's really about a culture of, we actually remove the word customer from this most of the time internally to create a culture of service. Because if we're of service to each other and to our bosses, to our coworkers, et cetera, then customer service is simply a natural extension of that culture, of that way of being. And again, this was actually really discovered. It's easy to point back and say, let's just be a customer service company, but a lot of this was discovered through innovation. So, for example, an innovation through limitations. So back in that day, you couldn't just buy shoes from any vendor and expect them to sell to you wholesale to resell on the web. I mean, just try that now. Just try calling up Nike and say you want to buy a bunch of wholesale pairs of shoes. They'll most likely say no because you're not an identified shoe-selling brand, I would think. And they said that to us for years even. A lot of vendors did. Said, we don't know you. We don't trust you with our brand, with our product. We're not going to sell it. So we couldn't even give them our money. So instead, it forced us to actually think, okay, how can we really be a remarkable client for our vendors? And now, of course, a lot more brands sell to us, but to this day, we still take vendors out. The people that we pay money, we pick up the tab when we go out and eat or go to drinks. We spend over 6 figures on a party every year just for our vendors, the people we spend money on. Because that was what worked for us early on, and we continued to carry this forward, this whole ethic, this whole culture of service. And that's what we've created a brand based on, and that's why we've been able to extend into various business lines besides shoes. So some of these wow factors with it are fast, accurate fulfillment. This is something that people have just come to expect. And this nature of expecting things has gotten really interesting because people sometimes ask, because we talk to people internationally and say, does this apply really across cultures? Does this really work for everyone? And it's kind of, the way I compare it to is that the first time you tried out your mobile phone, you didn't think, that was fun, that was nice, now I can do without it. Once you had your mobile phone, you pretty much always had to have a mobile phone. And I think that's what customers are starting to experience now. Once they experience great service with any brand, they start to kind of expect it. But that's where it gets interesting because the whole word wow, that's our lead core value, deliver wow through service. To achieve the wow, in a lot of ways you've got to create a surprise. Because if it's expected, then it's not really a wow. It's kind of like, I expected that. Of course you're going to do it. But so we actually build in surprises, like an upgrade to overnight shipping, even though they paid for 7-day shipping. Just next day, hey, surprise, you're getting it today. That we didn't promise at first, that we actually provide a surprise. And that surprise factor, again, a lot of this theme you're going to be hearing through this is what's happening external to the company is happening internally, and that's that through factor, that alignment. So the surprise that happens inside the company, for example, is that we're not entitled to bonuses as employees. But when we hit profitability, we got a 10% bonus, and then we didn't get one for a while. And then when Amazon bought us, we got a huge one. And then we didn't get one again for a while. And it's this kind of random factor that creates surprise, that creates wow. So rather than entitling people, whether it be our customers or anybody else, we like delivering that base level of amazing service, but figuring out what's that surprise that we can go above and beyond. And that we really started to start trends in the industry with that helpful above and beyond customer service, where there's no call limit times, where our longest call on record is 8.5 hours. We actually consider the telephone a branding device. We think it's the best social media device available because you've got the full attention of your customer and the ability to learn from them and really make a direct connection. And we look for ways to connect with them, whether it be hearing their dog barking in the background, to if something's going on tragically in their life or if they're celebrating a wedding, and really connecting them on that level. And we have various different wow tools that we can use. Actually, we have over 100 that one, for example, it can be something as simple as look for a way to make them laugh. That can just be a wow, adding a laugh to somebody's day. These kind of little simple things of ways to connect to customers that create a whole culture where people are ready and looking and finding ways to wow. And you can see that in stories that are happening here where, for example, our computers went down and people, without being told what to do, in the middle of a call just pulled out their cell phone so they could start surfing Zappos.com on their website to help out a customer so they wouldn't have to lose the customer mid-call. And that kind of thing comes from a culture of it. And it starts really with the training at first by really recruiting people who are in alignment with our values, who value service. If somebody doesn't value giving great service, you can't train that into them. We've found that you really can't. You're really pushing a boulder uphill if you think you can train somebody into valuing the things you value. So first, recruiting is to screen people and find the people who are really dedicated to that. We do that through story-based interviewing, questions like when was the last time that you gave a surprise to a coworker, and asking for stories like that. And then once they come in and they go through those interviews, we select about 2% of overall candidates who really come in, and they get 5 weeks of culture training where they learn about the core values, about customer service, about the legendary stories, all these things of training for everybody in the company, and it's really quite epic. It feels like an amazing experience to go through it. I went through it right next to the COO of the company because everybody has to do it. Everybody takes the training. Everybody takes calls, especially during the holiday season. You'll see Tony, the CEO, right there next to anybody else taking calls to chip in. That's part of keeping it humble so that we don't have that every layer that I see happening in a lot of companies where management and leaders are just out of touch about what's really happening on the front line. And just coming by and getting feedback or even just sitting on a call doesn't really make it happen. We all have to do at least 10 hours on the calls, whether you're in marketing or any other department, and really sit there for a while and see what it's like. And the great thing about that is a lot of innovation can really come through that. Beyond just the humbleness factor, beyond just learning about what it's like to be on the front lines, this is a view of our intranet. This is actually my record here. Our intranet, by the way, it looks like it's from the mid-'90s. If you think technology is really required to make the difference, it's not something that we really believe in. A lot of our technologies, a lot we do by email, a lot of it's just looks like it's from an older time, but it's really what's behind it that's driving it. So this is our intranet. And a lot of innovations that have come on here, they come from a developer sitting down and realizing how long it takes to do something, and then because they've sat with it for 8 hours having to do returns, and they'll create a change just by having had that experience, whereas just being locked up in the computer lab and only having to do this in a simulated environment, it doesn't really make as much sense for the larger innovation. So we believe that the great ideas can come from everywhere, but that's only going to happen if everybody has that frontline customer service experience and then can take that level of service back to their departments. The way that we wow each other in our own departments is fascinating as well, whether it be for anniversaries or birthdays or just taking out another department to a happy hour or just picking out a random gift. That wowing, that surprise factor happens internally as well. So what's behind this service is really what I've been talking about this whole time, is creating a culture of service. Culture is our biggest asset. It's what we're looking to protect. It's what management guru Peter Drucker called, it says it eats strategy for breakfast. And this is it's something that's driving every single thing that's happening. And people talk about creating culture. It's not so much about creating it because it's happening whether you know it or not. It's going on. The question is, are you going to change it? And the question is how are you going to co-create it? Because it doesn't come from leadership. The model can come from leadership, but it's really everybody's responsibility, which is why we don't have a chief culture officer. We believe everybody's responsible for the culture, so we're not ever going to delegate that to one person. And what I've seen happen after talking to a lot of businesses is this whole kind of concept of flavor of the month, of management initiatives. So like a new business book comes out or a new philosophy, and it starts to get regarded as, something that management gets excited for. They try to roll it out. It kind of gets half-baked. Maybe some people like it, some people don't. It starts to fade into the background. And then the institutional memory of the company starts to fade into the background as a new flavor of the month comes up. And if you're there long enough, you remember that there were 4 of them that came up, or maybe you're too new for that. But this kind of idea of fads or trends is the thing that I personally love fighting against, because this is beyond that. And the real antidote to that whole flavor of the month idea is that it has to be something that is lasting beyond trends, beyond strategy, beyond initiatives, even beyond people, because people are going to leave. You're going to leave. And what is the legacy that you're going to leave has to be beyond even your own leadership strengths. And so the DNA of this that we've really come to find that can go on through multi-generations, several different offices, high economy, low economy, is really the values. The values are really that source code because it directs activity without prescribing it. And this is actually something that I really learned from Tony Robbins, I think, in one of his book or audio programs, because he said I think he was asking a dad of 15 moms, or 15 kids, that's a little strange, a dad of 15 kids, how he actually kept everything in order. To have 15 kids must be pure chaos. And as you know, running a company of even 15 or thousands, tens of thousands can be chaos. And so the dad said the solution was to have very few rules. That was his simple answer, have very few rules. Because if you have lots of different rules and lots of initiatives and lots of strategies to follow, it all just becomes fading into the background, and people just deal with whatever's most important to them, regardless of what's important to the rest of the culture. But if you have few rules that everybody's clear on, that may take some interpretation, it's kind of like the commander's intent in the Army of like everybody's clear on that direction to go. So with our family values here, you can see they're unique, they're different, they start with a verb, and they really are about creating an experience that you look at it and say that would be fantastic to live up to. They're really quite inspiring. So this whole idea of wow is to go beyond, really going beyond good service. I like to think, when I think of good service, I think of my web hosting company where my site doesn't go down. That's really good service. I don't need to think about it. It's just good. But wow is that unexpected factor that gets people talking about it, that gets people blogging, using social media, saying you've got to hear this or you've got to use it. That's the wow factor, and that's the standard that we're setting as a value. Like I said, both internal to the company and the culture as well as to the customer. Embracing and driving change. This one's huge. It may sound obvious, but I think everybody's for this until something changes in your company that you don't like, and then suddenly you're against that change. And it happens to everybody. It happens around here a lot, which is why we have this value, because we call each other out on it. Somebody will complain and say, oh, but, embrace and drive change. And when you can call somebody out on a value, what's incredible about that is that it's not personal. It's not political. It's not, I don't like you and your attitude. Stop that. It's no. Remember, we have these values that we pledged an oath to. And so me calling you out on a value isn't getting in your face personally. It's just reminding you what you're already committed to. And so that's why the inspiration can come from within. We like to say, how can we inspire people rather than motivate? Because motivate requires external factors to get people to do something, whereas inspiration comes from within. And like I said, we hire for these values. We train for them. This is really something that's embedded in the people by the time they're even really getting within the door. Creating fun and a little weirdness. This is our way of saying that we want people's individuality. People joke about Zappos being like a cult, and I actually say it's quite the opposite, because cults, they all dress the same, they all act the same. If you come to Zappos, you see everybody seems completely different. We really embrace people's differences and ask them to bring them here, because that's where a lot of hidden talents will lie. And also, a lot of employees will use a lot of energy to not be themselves. If they have to button up and fit into a certain environment, they're literally using energy to not be themselves. Being adventurous, creative, and open-minded, you can see it everywhere. That's how we really challenge our own business model and how we take it to the next level and constantly stay relevant within our customers' mind, within the media's mind, within our own employees' minds. Pursuing growth and learning, I feel this value is really driving a lot of the other values, actually, because it's our own growth and learning that's connected to our happiness. We decided to really study the science of happiness, of what makes it happen, because it's really not money. People will tend to take money and then put it into things, actually, that won't make them happy. Savings doesn't make them happy. It's definitely prudent and a good thing to do, but we're going for happiness. We're not, looking for prudent here. We give people salaries to live on. We're not looking to choke anybody off. But we will invest in things that are proven by the science of happiness to create happiness. Pursuing growth and learning is one of them. It's really a strong driver of it. Building open and honest relationships with communication. This is something huge. I haven't seen a single company that isn't struggling with this, and we build this in to remind ourselves. It's not just about the honesty, because I can be honest with somebody and really ruin their day just with honesty, but the purpose of it is to build relationships. And we're constantly citing this value and bringing it into conversation. And I just had a whole open conversation with my own team. And we started it off by actually taking 10 minutes just to define this value and what it means so that we could set a tone of what the conversation would look like. Building a positive team and family spirit, again, very important in terms of that we praise publicly, criticize privately. It's not that you can't have a bad day, but if you are, I'm going to take you aside. I'm not going to do that publicly. I'm going to find out if there's something as a coach, as a boss, that there's something, if you're being negative, is there something deeper that's going on there? Because if the negativity really goes public, then it becomes like a weed. But if we isolate it and really give it the attention it deserves, then we can see if we need to cut it off, or they might not be a team fit eventually, and there's a whole process that we have for that. Doing more with less is our whole idea of being efficient. This helps so much. My own team comes to me when they have budget propositions and ideas. They say, look, check it out. Here's a way that we can do this for very little money because it's the value that we have. Being passionate and determined, definitely something that we look for in all our employees. And being humble, which I didn't really understand until somebody pointed out to me that the way to be humble is to take on such big, huge, almost impossible tasks that you have to feel small as a result and take help from anybody you can. And that's part of our being humble. We started off with impossible goals, and we continue to. And so we have to be humble because we don't assume that we're so cocky enough that we can do this on our own. We need a lot of help, and the only way that we're going to do that is to be humble. That's why we share a lot for free. We share a culture book and send it around the world for free. We give tours for free, just to as part of our value of being open and honest with what we're up to, as well as being humble. So the mission overall doesn't change, the values and the mission. The mission, it just really sums up both the inside, living the culture, and delivering the brand, the customer service of WOW. That's our mission. That's not going to change at all. But the evolving vision is what does change. And I think this is a lot of the part of the antidote to flavor of the month as well, which is, do you have a vision that can be achieved within 2 to 3 years, something that's actually achievable? It's a big, huge goal, but something that people can really wrap their minds around, see themselves being a part of, and say, I can contribute to this, I can make it happen. Because if the vision is just decades into the future, it just becomes demoralizing never to hit it year after year. But if it's something that everybody can work on where it's kind of medium term, it's not just something that's going to happen within the year, within the month, but it's going to take a few years to achieve, that's when it becomes really gratifying to be a part of a higher purpose that the company's committed to. And our history with that, just the why, as you guys know, the why is really driving everything. It creates a larger story of something of being a part of something. So for us, just returning and selling shoes and clothing day in and day out, I mean, that gets boring. We need a larger story to be a part of. People can see themselves in a great vision. They say, you know what, this is how I'm going to help make that happen. It creates a sense of purpose, or I should really say a shared sense of purpose, so that it's unifying us as a team. And then ultimately, this is a way that people can enjoy life of customer service. People say, how do you keep people on the phones and happy for so long? Because usually there's 100% turnover year over year for a call center. And then you have to train and retrain, et cetera. Rather than focusing on growth, it's kind of like just replenishing. This is a way that can do it. If you've got a vision that people love to be a part of and live into in an environment that people love, then they can enjoy life of customer service. So ours really started out with, let's just be the biggest shoe store online. And that was pretty epic, especially back in the time in the late 90s to achieve that. And what you'll see with great visions is that they don't go away. They actually build on each other. So while we're past this vision, we're still the largest selection of shoes online. We're just building on that and with our next vision. And so our next became to have the best customer service. We realized it was working and said, well, how can we be the best in the world at that? And as you know, we've become a brand that's been completely known for customer service, and we've achieved accolades like the one from American Express. And then it became really about being the best place to work, and the verifiable, achievable stat of that is getting onto the Fortune 100 best companies to work for. Starting at number 23, the next year number 15, last year, this past 2011, we hit number 6. So big, huge goal, but they also have a specific outcome to say, okay, how can we know that we hit it, that's verifiable in space and time? And then it goes beyond this. We said, how can we go beyond service? How can we go beyond customers? How can we go beyond our own company into a larger vision. And the way Tony really dreamcast that one is to create the best community that there is. And I'm showing you the strip because this is what Las Vegas is typically known for. But what's not known for is a place past all of this that you can't see called downtown, where there's a lot. It's old Vegas, it's old school, but there's a lot of free land there. And we've actually just in the process of renting 13 acres to create a whole campus. It's almost like the Googleplex, but applied to an entire community. And everybody is starting to see how they can contribute to the larger community, even if it's not related to Zappos as the company. And I can tell you, of course, in a lot of ways that doesn't make sense, but the amount of passion and vigor and excitement people have to be a part of it makes it so that this is not just about selling stuff. This is not just about shoes, and it's not just about coming in here, having the great Zappos Disneyland-style experience, and then leaving after a few years. It's about a lifetime commitment. And this is the larger vision that we're living into now. And to be a part of something that epic, that huge, and to really feel like our coworkers, our family, it's something that makes me somebody who's, as you heard by my description, I've been an entrepreneur most of my life, and this is the first time I've really wanted to commit to a company for so long because I can see myself being a part of it. And the thing that you can't see on the balance sheet is how much money is saved with turnover, training costs, losing people, lawsuits, all these kind of things that are associated with turnover costs that you just can't put on a line item budget because you can't estimate it. But instead, this forward action, innovative thinking to focus on a culture of service that creates these amazing customer experiences is really how we've done it. And again, it'll frustrate the heck out of you if you're a data stats person because you just can't draw that exact line. I was actually just speaking to Google last week, and they were asking if we track the number of wows that we get per phone call. They're very, very engineering and stat-driven kind of culture, and it was a little frustrating for them to hear no, but at the same time they were quite fascinated because, again, they see that it's working. They see that people are happy. So they see the customers are happy. And the analogy that I really like to use for this is that any big, huge advancement in business starts off as counterintuitive at the time. So, for example, the turn of the century, when people were in factories and making widgets, this was a time when the best practice business philosophy was to have people working like slaves and getting as much output of them as possible. I mean, that's what efficiency was all about. And then somebody said, you know what, I'm going to give our people breaks. I'm going to give them time off. I'm going to give them lunch. And it seemed ludicrous at the time. Wait, you're paying them not to work. You're paying them for an hour of lunch. You're paying them to take a little time off. And that person was regarded as crazy at first. But in the long run, they saw low turnover rates, low sickness, low injuries, greater morale, greater productivity. And now it's so built into the institution that if you don't give that, it's illegal. But at the time, it was really counterintuitive. And so that's why I think a lot of these things that we're covering here in terms of devotion to people's happiness in the company, in terms of devoting time and energy and money to your employees' own personal growth, and elements of service to the point of not having call limit times and not having call scripts and just giving people freedom within certain constraints of core values. All these things, I believe, are going to be common business practice 30 years from now, and it's just going to seem obvious. But right now, those of you who are really embracing this idea and looking to create this kind of change in your organization are way ahead of the time. And that's why I love my job, because I get to talk to you guys who are the advanced business thinkers of our time and who are really not only advancing business, but what we like to say is really creating the world as a better place. Because if you've got happier employees, what does that mean? That means they're going home happier. That means their spouses, their wives, and their husbands are happier. That means their kids start to reflect that and see what happiness is like, and they bring that with them to school. And all these people are applying it to whatever they're bringing into the world. So the amount of exponential good that you're doing for the world, I believe personally, by implementing some of these practices and focusing on these things is really taking us to the next level. So that's what I got for you guys in terms of presentation. I know that we can talk all day about specifics. That's why I don't go into too many about what we do, because I want to know specifically what it is that that's on your mind. And how I can be of most service to you. So I'll check the chat window and also turn it over to you, Mike, in terms of talking about questions.
Awesome. I know right away a few people were asking, you mentioned earlier, I believe it was Tribal Leadership.
Yeah.
I think it's by Warren Bennis. And you said
Dave Logan, forward by Warren Bennis.
There was a link that they could go to?
Yeah, it should work if you just go to Zappos.com and type in Tribal Leadership into the search bar. You'll have to be a registered member. You don't have to buy anything, but you just have to have a login, and then you can download the MP3 of the book.
Awesome. Now, in terms of customer service and the experience that you guys obviously have with your clients at Zappos, we've heard the pizza stories and people ordering pizzas through Zappos and all that fun stuff and having crazy fun with what's going on. How important is it first for a company to check in and create that culture internally where management and leadership are serving their employees first? When you look at a scale of 1 to 10, basically, how do you rate the importance of that in terms of it then being passed on to the customers that are coming to the company?
I rate it as a 10, honestly, because it's just everything else is acting and it becomes short-term and unsustainable. Because you're kind of, if you're unhappy at work in any way, then that's going to be reflecting somehow in terms of everything that you're doing. So it's very subtle. I think a lot of people won't even recognize it and realize it. But once you get that taste of the other side of it, where you're creating an environment where people love to be, and they start associating the company with their happiness, and they say, you know what, I want to do what's best for the company. I want to really take on this company like it's my own. That's what I've been amazed to feel here at the Zappos environment, is that people here act like it's their company, like they started it, like this is their baby, and that's how they feel about it. It's a lot of we language if you're listening for it. It's a lot of we rather than they. There isn't so much of a they. It's our company, and when people feel that level of ownership, that's when amazing things really happen.
Excellent. I just want to remind everybody as well, the questions go in the question box on the right, so go ahead and keep them coming in. And we'll pass them on and see what answers we can get. Another question, in terms of keeping it sustained, what are some of the key principles? If you gave the best practices to sustain like a rock star culture, a culture that's absolutely fulfilling for the employees, it's also passed on, to the customer and affects the bottom line, what would be like best practices in communication between management and employees to sustain that?
Yeah. First is what I call unbreakable rituals. The idea of an unbreakable ritual is regardless of how well the company is doing, regardless of what's happening, you have certain rituals that are going to happen regardless. So for us, there's many of them. There's ones like our all-hands meeting where 4 times a year we shut down the call center, meet to celebrate, talk, share information about what's going on. Every company I know of can basically share more information with their employees. We do that every day on my team, and we have something called snaps where we congratulate people or thank them for something every morning. We have our team building events. Once a month, we must schedule something that is off-site where we get together and just get to know each other as people. And like I said, it doesn't matter what's going on in the business. These things have to happen. And when people kind of this is what I think we've kind of come to rely on in culture in general, not just work culture, but that that Saturday's coming, that that Thanksgiving is going to happen, that the holidays are there. Like, these things are unbreakable rituals within society, but we really have to engineer them within a corporate environment to make sure that they're still happening there. So what are your rituals that you're doing to enforce, not really enforce, but really enable and provide celebration, recognition, information sharing? That's the first, I'd say. The second would be to share the things that you want to keep. So anything that you love about the company, about the culture, about the service, create mechanisms that enable you to share it both internally and externally. One of the ways we do that is with the culture book. We capture the culture every year with the book, and we share it with everybody that way. The meetings that we have and emails that go out, we share best calls that are happening. On our intranet, there's a section right there in the front when you log in to see, here's a story of a great call that happened. So anything that you want to keep. Culture really exists a lot in language. And so what you share with customers, with employees, with these things that are going on, both the history, like the epic stories of your past, or what's the mythology of how your company started. Does everybody know the story about how your company started? There's a lot of value in that to become a part of it. So get it into the culture constantly by sharing it, especially the history when people start out, but then day in and day out, whatever it is that you want to increase, whether it be especially gratitude. I think gratitude is hugely underestimated within corporate environments. People value recognition in a lot of ways emotionally more than money. So, but the only way to really do this is to do this systematically so that you don't have to remember to do it. If it's in a system, if it's in a ritual, if it's just built in to happen, that's kind of what, if you've read Good to Great, an amazing book by Jim Collins, is the whole flywheel concept of that it's hard at first because you're creating these, but once you have them going and to have people take responsibility for it and share the responsibility with people to make it happen, then the flywheel starts flying on its own and it really becomes a lot of momentum to the culture itself.
Excellent. Yeah, Good to Great is a fantastic read for anybody who's a business owner.
Yeah.
You know, here's another great question. They're all coming in. Thank you guys for your questions. These are fantastic. We're going to get through them as fast as we can. Let's see. How do you keep the quality of calls while setting quantity of call goals?
Yeah, the way we do that is it's really throughout the culture. We do it through a buffer zone. So we have a call time so that people are answering the phone under a minute. And to do that, we really essentially need a bench. So we overestimate the people that we need. And this is not to say that we don't track things. We have amazingly complex Excel spreadsheets and looking at call volumes and things like that. But the general principle that can be followed regardless of your size of company is to create breathing room. So that the customer is getting a fast answer for one. So you're not just maximizing efficiency so that people can be on for 15 minutes. We really maximize it so people are on for 45 seconds. And then creating enough space so that people have that 20% time. We call it the 80-20 rule. Beyond lunch and breaks, 20% of their time they can spend learning, growing, doing parades, culture activities, team building, all these kind of things that help to grow the culture. You may have heard of how Google lets its engineers spend 20% of their time on non-related work projects because that's where their innovation comes from. We are about that from a cultural standpoint. From a culture standpoint, we create that 20% time for them to just do whatever they want in terms of the culture, and that's what really helps us sustain it. So the thing is, the crucial distinction here that I'm seeing is for culture itself to really be seen as an investment, seen as an asset. Right now, too much, I think it's like a liability and seen too much of how do we limit it? How do we make it as small as possible? How do we make this a tiny footprint in our organization and get it to be non-existent there if we could? We take the opposite standpoint. Customer service as innovation center, as branding tool, as an investment. And in order to do that, you essentially, the basic philosophy is to overcompensate in terms of number of people there so that you can create that bandwidth in that time.
Excellent. Robert, the feedback that's coming in is fantastic. Everybody's absolutely loving the presentation and the Q&A. Just wanted to pass that on real quick.
Thank you. Great. Good to hear it.
This is a great question. Simple yet really effective. How can I change my culture to one like that at Zappos?
Do we have 2 days for the call? I'm trying to. It's a fantastic question. So
I'd say this. Hey, Robert, if we could give them like a 3 to thrive. You know, Tony says 3 tipping point areas.
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah. The first thing is our Tony has been fond of saying that the quickest way to build trust is through transparency, is through openly sharing. And for one thing, it's hard to know what kind of culture you're going to want to have unless you're really clear on what you value. What is it that's important to you, whether the business is going up or down, whether you're making millions and millions of dollars or whether things are going down, that you're having a great experience. That's what values are about. If you look at all our core values or anybody else's, the purpose of it is to create an experience. And once you're can kind of get an edge on that, I know our core values process took a year. Sometimes it can take a long time to really get clear on what that is. But you can start because at least part of you at a gut feeling knows what experience you want to create for you and the customer. And you can start writing that down and just getting clear on that for yourself. A leader has to be very, very self-aware, very clear of what they want, or it's going to be extremely hard to lead other people. So if you are clear on that, just in a general sense even, of what you want for yourself, for your work environment, for your employees, the first step is really to assess where that is, to see where you're out of alignment, to actually go to your own people, maybe just starting with, if you've got a big company, your direct reports, and say, look, this is what I'm committed to. I'm committed to this experience for our customer. I'm committed to this experience for our team, and asking them, where do you feel like we're out of alignment? So that first step of it, because it's not so much 3 things to do as much as it is a sequence. And the sequence is, with that first step, is to really get honest and get clear and say, okay, let's not pull the wool over our eyes. Let's not get all rosy and just say we're going to have a great culture and everything's going to be fantastic. Let's look at our own stuff and see, where are we out of alignment? Where are we saying one thing but doing another? That's what integrity is all about. That's why integrity is not one of our core values, because we believe you have to have integrity to even play any core value, because if you're not going to do it, core value, what's the point of having core value? So integrity is first to key. And so first you just got to get honest and realize, where are you out of integrity? Where are you like really wanting something, but here's where it's off? And do a full kind of accounting of where all those things exist, because the thing is, it's happening right now in the back of your mind, in the back of other people's minds. It's being stored there, and they're using energy there rather than just kind of purging it out. So what you want to first do is purge that out and see, okay, where is our work cut out for us? Where are we, before we start creating new things, where are we off on what's already going on right now? And turning to people and giving them an open, honest forum for that. And I think that what you can really do is you have to really create a safe conversation to do that. If you're just doing a drive-by by somebody's desk and saying, hey, what do you think? Where are we out of alignment? They're going to try to satisfy you as a boss and try to say what you want to hear. Whereas if you create a safe environment, and one of the ways to do that is the way we do it, by first defining in conversation what open and honest communication means. Or you take people out to lunch, off-site, just any place where they can kind of maybe take them out for a beer, any place where they can just kind of say, okay, it is safe to speak my mind right now. And you do that full assessment of where are you out of alignment and what can be done. And you let them vent and you let them say all those things and say anything else, anything else, anything else. Because what you're doing, even just that step alone, allows people just to clear it off their chest and vent and just say, oh, I've been thinking about this for so long. It's good to finally talk about this openly. That can really just help culture in and of itself, just people being able to talk. And so once you got that out there and they've said it all, they've said it all, then, only then, is that next the time to say, okay, what are your ideas? Where do you think we could start? What do you think is the most important one? What's the high leverage one? What do you think could make a big impact? And this is where I see things get really interesting for companies, where they've got a lot to work on, but then they start to see, I mean, Tony's big on leverage. You know, it's where's that high leverage idea? And some of the ones that we've seen there is one company was just really kind of skimping on benefits and decided to go huge on it, and it just created a huge happiness shift. Another, they just finally abolished the dress code that was bugging people and just allowed people to wear jeans. Didn't cost anything, but people being allowed to wear jeans to work, it just suddenly created all this surge of energy of, oh my God, we get to be comfortable and management is listening to us. And that starts to build the success on top of success. To try to do everything at once is just like, you know, taking Omaha Beach on your own. It's just that you don't want to do it. But if you can first let people purge, then get their ideas, and then see one key leverage idea that you can make happen pretty quickly, that's going to build a lot of great energy. That's going to build a lot of faith in you as a leader, that you're listening, that you're doing something, that you're making something happening. And the great thing about that is they're going to want you to win. They're going to want to be behind you, whereas before, when they didn't get to vent those frustrations, they might actually in some ways be working against you to say, I want to see this guy fail just so he knows how bad it is. But when they see you doing this, suddenly it's that kind of conversion factor over, like, they kind of see you more as like this underdog they want to win. Like, wait a minute, this guy can really do it. They could, or woman or anybody can really do it and make this happen for us. And they start contributing more ideas and how they can work on it with you. And then it becomes kind of this snowball of success. Again, the flywheel concept. But that's the way, that's that progression that I see anybody starting to really make a culture change.
Nice, nice. Wow, there's a lot of great questions. Let's look. Here's an interesting one, and I'm sure a number of our listeners are in the same position. They only have a small team of about 4 salaried employees, and then they have about 10 contractors that they work with that are paid per job. And the question is, what would be your top 3 tips to start their young company with an amazing culture? So somebody that's got a small base, most of the people they work with aren't directly working with them, they're contracted per job, and they've got and they also mentioned having a limited budget. What would be like the top 3 tips for a young company starting out?
Yeah, and I'd say this really applies to everyone because you can really find small teams or factions within any big company, even if it's not an official team. Everything does come down to small conversations. I like to actually call corporations a fiction because all you're really seeing are people communicating day in and day out with each other. We just happen to create these distinctions in our mind called HR, called the company, called anything. All communication and culture is people just communicating together with a shared purpose and a shared goal. So I'd say this applies to big companies as well, which is the thing that you can do is really to look to get to know people as people, to find out what drives them. Again, you can do this very well by taking people out to lunch and just sitting them down and really getting to know what is it that drives you? And you can really find out their own core values through this, even just by asking why. Why do you like that? Why do you like that so much? And you'll start to hear their core values. And you'll also start to hear what really drives them and what they want out of life. And this can go huge, really take you far in terms of your relationship with your coworkers because it's a first step in getting the whole person there. And again, you need the whole person there if you're going to get all their energy, all their devotion, all their passion for them to really embrace the company as if it were their own, as if they're an owner as well. And so what you want to do is first get to know them, hear what their goals are, hear what their passions are, and actually, and that'll do good in and of itself. But if you can actually write those down and start to keep track of it and think about it, you can start to keep those things in mind, especially when things like bonuses come around. It's much more effective if you know one of their dreams was, for example, what I just heard from one of my coworkers, to learn to ride a motorcycle. Rather than give them a few $100, the buying a few motorcycle lessons will make a huge impact. It'll be something that they'll remember for a long time. People are really craving, this is what I think is a larger trend that's starting to happen that I'm really seeing, is people are craving more human emotional contact with each other and to get in touch with what's really driving them. And people want to be seen. People want to be known. People want to be acknowledged. If you can build into these small teams a whole system and culture of acknowledgement, of saying, you know what, and specifically noticing what they do so well, honoring that, and then when it comes to reward time, thinking about those things that really drive them. And again, it gets into this whole idea of limitation as innovation, to say, if you don't have a lot of money, how are you going to innovate your way out of that? Do you know a friend, for example, in that story, do I have a friend who just rides a motorcycle that I can say, hey, I'd really love a favor from you. Could you teach my friend, my coworker, how to drive? Suddenly it doesn't cost $300 anymore. But if you have that limitation of the budget, start to see that as an asset. Start to see that as a way to start creatively thinking. But this whole factor of getting to know people individually as people, as managers, as leaders, we get so busy and we're so driven by the bottom line, and I do this myself, that it's like sometimes it just feels like a nuisance to deal with the everyday of people, but this is what they crave. This is what they want. They want a direct personal connection with you. They're in business with you probably a lot of times because they admire you in some ways, and a lot of ways because you're doing something they can't. And I think another way that you can actually reward them and contribute back to them is teach them things you know. You've gotten to where you are and farther because you know things that they don't. You have things that you can share just over your own brown bag lunch, not costing any money, and share with them that. It can be the little things. When I've taught my teams just how to do things like how to manage email better, or how to think of pitching a project to me. It started out as a problem for me. I'm like, people are coming at me with so many different ideas, and I can't just take them all. I said, okay, I'm going to give you a class. Here's how you think about an idea. Here's how you package it. Here's how you pitch it to me. And they loved it because this applies to taking their passion, their ideas, and putting it into a format that they can share with me, that they're going to apply to other areas of their lives as well, and they loved it. So there are skills that you have that you can share with them as well. So I hope those are helpful in terms of small team environments as well. Mike, are you there? Hello?
I am. I've got you.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, we had a question that was being asked by a ton of people, which is how can they take the Zappos training? And if it's not available, what are some of the recommendations, books, maybe other seminars or things that you'd recommend them go take to put them in alignment with what's taught, if the training is or it's available to them?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's this slide I'm putting up now, Zappos Insights. We do have a lot of different training events, boot camps. You can get our culture book there. Again, if you're talking no budget, we do things for free here, too. We do the tour. We do the culture book for free, all the way up to our intensive 2-day boot camp where you're literally a part of the Zappos culture for 2 days. It's pretty incredible. We're doing more and more speaking on-site at companies and consulting through core values and all kinds of other processes on-site at companies. So you can email me about that as well. There's my email address, Robert Richmond. In terms of other resources, Good to Great is absolutely fabulous, as is Tribal Leadership. If you have both of those books, if you can make everything happen in those 2 books, you don't need me or anybody else. I mean, those are 2 amazing books that will really guide you. But if you haven't been in what Tribal Leadership calls a Stage 4 culture like Zappos or someplace else, I highly recommend experiencing it in person because there's only so much I can tell you without a direct experience of it yourself. So I hope you'll come visit or get one of our culture books or just be a part of this in some way, because once you get it, you really get excited and your people get excited, and like a mobile phone, you don't want to turn back from it. You just always want to create a culture that people love, and you'll be a part of this whole movement.
Awesome. Well, Robert, thank you so much for being with us today. This was fantastic information. If anybody gets a chance, if they're in Las Vegas, I'd highly recommend them come visit Zappos and get a tour of the facility and see what it's really like hands-on. And we look forward to seeing everybody again with our next webinar. And until then, you guys, make it outstanding.